Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
We're back. It's episode 100
What?
of the Brunch and Judge. Woo, fireworks, sparkles, confetti.
How did we do this?
Beats the hell out of me. I mean,
What?
I don't, as we know, I am not good at sticking to anything.
Same.
So I'm just as shocked as everyone else. But here we are. Episode 100. So,
Right.
yay. Congratulations to us, Claire.
Yes.
And if
Closing in on like season 2.
I know. It's true. It's right. It's near the very end of season 2 of The Brunch and Judge.
I know.
But if this is your first time with us, we are your hosts. I'm April.
And I'm Claire.
And we are here to bring you some crazy paranormal and true crime and spooky and weird shit stories. Because that's who we are inside.
That is who we are.
For our 100th episode, the Wheel of Fate saw the mercy to shine down upon us with
Right.
a wild card.
Thank God.
That we could pick anything we wanted for this episode. So we did.
Indeed.
And since it is 100, Claire, you get to go first this week. What story have you brought us for our 100th episode?
I'm going to be talking about the.
Okay.
This was so random. I was watching Netflix and then I saw that there was a movie about this and I was like, I didn't watch the movie. I didn't
Okay.
have time to. But then I was like, that's interesting. I think I'm going to talk about that. Um, Technically, it's called the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, but I think everybody else knows it as the Andes flight disaster.
No.
Ah,
No.
yes,
That's hilarious.
but not hilarious. She's like, no, why would you do this to
No.
me?
So like is this the Alive? Is that what this is?
Yes, this is what that is.
This is okay. We all have those core memories of things that school did to us that hurt us
Ah,
forever. And having to read that book, I'm pretty sure it was my junior year of high school, is one of those core memories of I will never recover from the fact that I read that book.
right.
It stays in my brain rent free at all times.
And you're just like, so you
It's
can
not
probably
my
add some of
Roman.
your book stuff. I've
I was
never
say
read
it's
it.
not my Roman Empire, but I do think about it a lot because I'm like,
Because I
ugh.
haven't read it. I don't know that I
Um,
want to.
if you are sensitive or queasy in any way, don't. I can
Right.
still like I'm very creative, very visual, like creating scenes in my
Right.
head
Right.
when I
Right. Right.
read, and as they're like slicing off layers of frozen dead people to like gnaw on so they don't starve to death, I'm like, you can slice up people when they're frozen. Awesome. Okay, noted.
Right.
Blech.
Right. Right. Anyway, my sources were Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
Britannica, ABC News, and The Guardian.
Nice.
Yes. Yes. So, um, what it was a rugby club. I had always heard of it as a soccer team. I don't know why, but
You know
in
what? I would have told you that it was a soccer team. I read the book. I mean, it's 20 odd
right,
years ago, but
right, right,
I thought
right.
it was a soccer team.
But it's rugby. And I was
Sure.
like, cool, whatever. I was always like, it's the rugby team that crashed in the Andes. That's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was the Old Christians Club rugby team union from Montevideo, Uruguay.
Mm-hmm.
And they had chartered a plane to Santiago, Chile for a match against an English rugby team that called the Old Boys Club. And I was like, did not know this was rugby. I'd always heard soccer.
Yep.
Anyway, and the plane was a Fairchild FH 227D. That means zero to me. I know
Yep. No idea.
nothing about airplanes.
Those are just
So,
words, but okay.
yes, those are just things. This flight had 40 passengers and 5 crew. There were initially when they booked it, there were 10 extra seats. So the team invited family and friends to join. One woman, her name was Graciela Mariani, she joined after a last minute cancellation so she could travel to see her oldest daughter get married at her wedding.
Oh,
I know. Yeah, I know. And the pilot, his was Colonel Julio Cesar Ferradas. He was an Air Force pilot with over 5,000 flight hours. And his co-pilot was Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hector Lagurara. I don't know. I didn't look up any of these pronunciations. Don't ask me. So I'm just like, um, they departed on October 12th, but there were storms over the Andes because there are always storms when shit like this goes down that
right.
caused them to land in Mendoza and for the night. And so they were waiting for weather to improve. And then on to October 13th, they got up and the weather was still iffy, but it was supposed to be better by the afternoon. So they delayed the flight. And so they left around 2:18 that afternoon. They couldn't fly straight over the Andes Mountains due to full capacity and the height of the Andes Mountains. And with that particular aircraft, had to fly south and then make a U-turn and then kind of go back up north to Santiago. Throw up a map, show you what I'm
Okay.
talking. Throw up a map, show you what I'm talking about. Um, so the co-pilot La Guerra was at the controls and he was training, and I'm just like, but why? Why,
No.
why are we still training with people? No, why? I don't like this already. Like I'm
Yeah,
just
now I'm
like,
like,
but why?
nope.
And what's also bad is this aircraft was nicknamed the lead sled because the pilots felt that it was underpowered, like how it was built. And I'm just like, also why?
Great. I love
Again,
that.
yes,
Great. Great.
yes, great.
That feels really good. Uh huh.
I know, right? So, due to the cloud cover, the pilots couldn't visually confirm where they were, their location. So they were just using the instruments alone. And La Guerrera thought he had passed this area called the Planchon Pass, which he was going to pass that, and then they would reach this area called Curio. Did I write that right? I may have written that wrong. In my, I think there was a C in there I left out. Curico, I think that's what it's supposed to say. And then they had to turn back north. That's when they had to turn around. And he didn't, it said that he didn't see that the nav radio was saying that he was still like 37 to 43 miles west of that area where he needed to turn.
Ah, okay.
Don't know why he missed it. The other pilot didn't see it either.
Great.
He radioed the tower at Curico to say like, "Hey, I need to descend." And they
Mm-hmm.
gave him permission to descend to a certain height because then he would be landing sooner
Mm-hmm.
ish. They didn't have him on radar. And I think part of that was A, he wasn't there, also cloud cover and all that nonsense too. Um, but he was still over the Andes Mountains when he started to descend, which I'm just like, oh, no. I'm
Mm-mm.
like reading this, I'm
Mm-mm.
like, this is terrible. As the plane descended, the passengers said the survivors later said that they noticed that once they got out of the cloud cover, they're like, oh wow, we're really close to the mountains. And then they saw that they were like headed straight for a mountain
Uh-huh.
and that the turbulence was getting bad and that the pilots pulled the plane like almost like a completely vertical to pull
Mm-hmm.
it straight, to avoid running straight into the side
Into
of
the
this.
mountain, right?
Yeah. And that they were able to get the nose over this ridge, but the clipped the lower part of the plane and tore part of that off, and then it collided and lost the right wing. And I'm just like reading this, I'm just like, oh, this is terrible. Which may have also hit with such force that it ripped off the tail cone, which ripped off the back of the plane, and
Mm-hmm.
that lost two rows of seats, and three passengers and a flight attendant fell out of the back of the plane at that point. um, So the remaining engine propelled it forward until left wing caught a rock and the propeller ripped through the fuselage, which is like the body of the plane. Two more people fell out the back at that point. I'm just like sitting here, I'm like reading this. I'm like, oh my God, this is
Mm-mm.
like the worst thing ever. I can't
Mm-hmm.
imagine being on an airplane and like falling out the back. Like, I just
Mm-mm.
can't. Um, and then it crashed and slid down a steep slope of a glacier and was going at 220 miles an hour, sliding down this glacier until it crashed into a snowbank.
Wow.
And yeah, and so it crashed so hard that it uh caused the seats to break loose, and they rammed so hard into the cockpit that it pinned the pilots. Killed Ferratus instantly. It pushed him through the
Mm-hmm.
cockpit windshield. Um, so I'm just like over here, like, oh my God, this sounds horrible. Like that
Mm-hmm.
already sounds horrible, but then this is one of those. It's like it just keeps getting worse
It gets
stories.
so much worse.
It
It's
just
like
keeps getting
this seems really terrible and bad, but just wait, because it's gonna be so
worse,
much worse. And you're like, oh God.
right? 33 survived the initial crash.
Mm-hmm.
7 people died falling out of the back. One actually initially survived, but later suffocated in the snow.
Oh.
And yeah, and I'm like, oh, that sucks so hard because they said they found his body like sometime in December when they
Mm-hmm.
were like exploring around the crash site. Um, 4 died due to the impact, including the team doctor, Francisco, Nicola, and his wife, Esther.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the pilot, Ferratus, died instantly because it shoved his head through the windshield. The co pilot, La Guerrara, was critically injured and pinned in the cockpit, and he wanted somebody to get his pistol and shoot him, put him out of his
Mm-hmm.
misery because he knew, like, he was
Yeah.
just like, this is not going to end well. And they refused. And so he wound up passing like the next day. Like
Yeah.
they just, and I'm still just like, dude, just do it. Put him out of
Yeah.
his misery. He
Yeah.
knew. Like, don't let the man suffer.
No.
It's just like, come on. Like how long did the man have to suffer? I mean, obviously not that long, but still. Of the survivors, there were many that were critically injured.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of broken bones. Um, Mostly broken legs because of the
Right.
seats and all that. Several had compound fractures, and it said any of the ones that had the compound fractures, none of those people survived long. You had infection setting in and
Right.
all that. Of that, the people who were left, they faced all kinds of terrible stuff. They had snow, the freezing temps. They were able to use the plane's fuselage, which is basically like the body of the plane, as shelter, but didn't provide much protection from the harsh elements. And you have to remember these people were from like the beach area
Yeah.
in Uruguay. They're not used to the high altitude. They're not used to snow.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the clothing for it. They had nothing
Mm-hmm.
to protect against any of this stuff. So they didn't have anything to protect from the harsh elements up there. They were able to use the luggage from the plane to like close up the back part of the fuselage and like pack snow in to like
Try and
or yeah,
protect them some more from the elements.
yeah,
Yeah.
from the make a shelter out of it. One guy, his name was Fito Strauss, made a solar powered water collector because they talked about how yeah, you could eat the snow, but it was so cold that it hurt. It was like
Mm-hmm.
chopping on ice all the time. So they were able to like take sheets of metal and use the sun to like melt it to make it water so they actually could drink it. Um he was also able to make some kind of sunglasses to prevent snow blindness from some kind of green plastic visors from the cockpit and
Mm-hmm.
bra straps and electrical wire.
Wow. Some MacGyver shit going on there.
Yeah, really, I mean, you've listened to some of the stuff that they did and you're just like this really was like legit
Yeah.
MacGyver going on here. I mean, this was like the definition of root hog or die. I mean,
Yeah.
it really was. Um, the food supply that they did have consisted mostly of wine and candy bars. They did have some jam. They had some dates. I mean, not a lot of.
No,
There were
it's a
no
small
protein.
little What's a small
Yeah.
flight? It's supposed to be short.
Yeah.
Yummy things to get through. That's all.
Snacks. That's all. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like, this is my snack. One, it talked about the one guy who you probably mostly hear about. His name was Nando Parado. He's the one who everybody talks to, the one survivor people talk to a lot. And he said he ate like one chocolate covered peanut like every 3 days,
Wow.
as far as like trying to like ration things out. So, you know, people weren't like eating
Yeah.
it immediately. But it said what they did have didn't last much longer than a week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they were out there, guys, for 10 weeks. I'm just going to tell
Yeah.
you now, 10 weeks in the snow. I mean, frigid snow. I'm just like, on the top of this mountain. I'm just like, yeesh. Um, so like I said, they were basically MacGyvering their way through all this. And um they eventually, much to, I mean, this was not something they took lightly. It wasn't something they were like, oh, let's just do this. I mean, they discussed it at length. And a lot of these people were Catholic. And so that weighed into it a lot. But they did
Mm-hmm.
discuss at length to begin eating the dead bodies of their, I mean, these people were their friends and family. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like these were just strangers. They're
Yeah.
starting to eat. And that's where the cannibalism came in, because it was like, we need protein. We can't just keep, and before that, they've resorted to eating like the stuffing from the seats and leather from their belts and
Mm-hmm.
shoes. So they really were trying to avoid that. It wasn't like that was their first
Yeah.
option. They didn't want to do that, but it was like, we're going to die if we
Yeah.
don't do this. And so it became one of those things where it was like, and there were certain people that held out as long as they could. And then finally they were like really getting weak. And finally some people convinced them, like, hey, because like I said, a lot of these people were Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
Like this, that part in the Bible where it's like Jesus broke his body for you, this is my
Mm-hmm.
body broken for you.
Well, and
That's
you
kind of how
have
they
to.
convinced them to like eat,
Yeah.
and it wasn't, like I said, they didn't take this lightly. And when April was talking about them slicing up,
Blech.
they were using broken glass
Mm-hmm.
from the windshield, from the plane, the metal, that stuff. It wasn't like they were just like, they weren't Hannibal Lectering through this. It
No.
wasn't,
No.
it wasn't like that. It was just, they were desperate. It was bad, bad, bad,
Yes.
bad
So
circumstances.
horrific. Oh my god. I'm telling you, I'm having flashbacks to this book because I was like, the fuck am I reading? What did my
Right.
English teacher do to me, guys?
I feel like that for you was like reading Alicia for me.
I
Because I
also
feel
read
like,
Alicia.
yeah, yeah. And
I
that was
think it,
like,
I swear to God, it was like the same year that I had to read both those books. I'm like,
you're
guys,
like, the
guys.
trauma. What kind of PTSD are you throwing on me as a student, man?
I know.
Anyway, I digress about that. Um, so that happened, all of the crash happened on the 13th. So on October 29th, an avalanche, things couldn't get worse. An
Mm-hmm.
avalanche, kind of two avalanches, kind of at the same time, happened in the middle of the night. Almost completely filled the fuselage. So where they're while they're sleeping, it said that like where basically 8 people could, like the area that was left was like kind of where 8 people could stay. There were like 19 people crammed in
Mm-hmm.
there. It killed 8 more people. The avalanche did, and the survivors were trapped, and they knew that if they didn't get out, they were going to run out of air.
Mm-hmm.
And so 3 days later, Nando Parado was able to tunnel out, but he came out to a giant blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are you kidding me? So they kind of had to hunker back down for 3 more days. They were trapped. And basically, it was just they had to begin eating their newly deceased friends.
Yeah.
And it's just one bad thing after another. And so then once they were finally able to get out, they were trying to explore around the crash. But again, like I said, because these people were not used to the altitude, they suffered from altitude sickness,
Mm-hmm.
malnourishment, dehydration, snow blindness, because by this point, I'm sure the sunglasses were lost
Mm-hmm.
from the avalanche. Um, and eventually 3 more people died. I think it said 2 because of the injuries from the avalanche, and then 1 I think was just like a starvation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because people, I think it was one of those you just get tired of eating dead people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no thanks. So 16 people at this point were left. 3 of them set out. One of them was Nando Parado. Another guy's last name was Canessa, and another guy's last name was Vizintin. Vizintin.
Mm-hmm.
They used a homemade sleeping bag, and so before they went out, and when I say they, it was like all 16 of them fashioned this giant sleeping bag for the 3 of them to sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
They used insulation from the plane, electrical wire, and waterproof material from the AC unit. And one of the guys had like a sewing kit that he had brought with him. And he kind of taught other people to sew too. And they basically kind of quilted it all together and made this giant, because they said like during the day with the sun, it kind of got up a little bit above freezing, but
Mm-hmm.
during the night was when they were like, it's going to kill us.
Yeah.
So they built this giant sleeping bag for the 3 of these guys to sleep in, and they knew their body heat would kind of keep them
Right.
from freezing at night with this insulated sleeping bag. And they're like, okay, we can do this. So on December 12th, so they've been out there for like almost, 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
2 months at this point. They set out on to find, and they thought that because of the pilots, they thought they were closer to Chile than what they
Mm-hmm.
were. So they thought it wouldn't be that far, and no, it was a lot farther. So they hiked for 3 days. They had no hiking gear whatsoever. So shoe. Oh, and they said that they like used plane parts to kind of like make snowshoes too to
Mm-hmm.
like walk through, which it's also like
Yeah, they
just
all had
all
like
of it.
flip flops and like a
Yeah.
pair of tennis shoes. Like it was, they
Yeah, because Santee,
literally,
they were basically flying from like one coast to the other coast, from one
yeah,
beach to
one
the other
beach to
beach.
another. So they were
Yeah,
not, there was,
prepared. Mm-mm.
oh,
And so on day 3, Vizintin decided to turn around and go back to the plane because it was taking longer than what they had anticipated, and he didn't want the others to. He was like, "I'll go back so you all can like ration out the rest of this food." Which by food we know what that means.
yes, but also he was going to go walk 3 days back without his sleeping bag.
I guess. Yeah.
Idiot.
But I guess he made it because it didn't say anything about him dying.
Hmm.
So I guess he dealt. He I don't know. And so Parado and Canessa continued on for like 9 more days. Like, and finally they started seeing like old camping sites where people had camped, and they're like, oh, we're getting closer to some kind of civilization. And then they
Mm-hmm.
finally saw like where there's less snow and it's getting green, so they're coming down the mountain, and they finally saw cows, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh, we're getting close. And they get to this river, and they happen to see these guys on horseback on the other side of this river, and Parado like yells across, but the river's so loud they can't really like
Right.
communicate. And so the guy on the horse is like, he yells back and he's like, tomorrow. I mean, can you imagine being that close? And then this guy's like, I'll come back tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's like, no, please, we just so desperate.
Like, no.
Save me now.
I know. And then there's like no guarantee that guy's going to come
Mm-hmm.
back tomorrow. Like, what? But the guy did come back, and he came back with paper and pencil that he tied to like a rock and threw it across. And I'm just like, this is like some like message in a bottle bullshit. Like, I
It's
just like
insane.
it is insane. But this is the 70s, and there were no cell phones or any like, I'm just like, ugh. Anyway, he throws the rock across the river. I'm like, hey, how big was this river? Is this like the Rio Grande? Like, what is,
Yeah.
I don't know how big this river was. He throws it across the river, and then and I'm like, really? This is what you wrote? You like wrote a small novella on this piece of paper. Anyway, So Parado wrote on this piece of paper, he wrote, I come from an airplane that crashed in the mountains. I'm Uruguayan. We have been walking for 10 days. I have a wounded friend up there. In the plane, there are still 14 injured people. We need to get out of here quickly, and we don't know how to. We don't have any food. We are weak. When are you going to come get us, please? We can't even walk. Where are we?
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
why would you write that much? I mean, but
Delirium. I don't
I
know. You're
guess, I guess. I mean, because at one point it said that they had a radio and they had heard like, and I will say, okay, they did go search for them for like 8 days
yeah.
and then called it off because they couldn't find them.
Well, and they assumed they were all dead. Like,
Yes.
I get it.
And then, and they heard this on the radio, but they couldn't, it wasn't like a radio where they could like communicate.
Right.
And then they thought, oh, we're all dead. They've stopped looking.
Yeah.
But then the radio started working again, and at one point they heard they started searching again, and so I think that was part of the reason they started, like, oh, we're gonna go try to find help or something.
Mm-hmm.
So then when they got this note, that's when okay, so authorities were contacted, and on December 22nd, 1972, two helicopters were sent. Six were saved on that day, but then bad weather happened and the rest wound up being rescued the next day. So,
Mm,
but it wasn't like the bad weather like killed anybody else.
that's good. That's good.
So, 16 survivors out of the 45 people that were on that plane initially.
Which to me is still insane that that many people survived all of this.
Right. 100%.
I would not be among them. I would have
No.
died.
Oh, absolutely.
I would have frozen to death super fast. So
Yeah. Um, is it that Parado, he was 22 years old when it happened.
mm-hmm.
And he didn't want to talk about it for like 26 years, which I don't blame him.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a lot of trauma.
And that finally he finally opened up about it. And then once he did, then he started traveling and talking about it and doing, going to places and doing talks about like his experience and what happened, which I think was probably cathartic in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this, what, like I said, I saw this thing on Netflix. It's called the Snow Society or Society of Snow, but it's a foreign film about it. So
I'm not gonna watch it.
but I read something where he watched it and his wife watched it and she looked at him and she was like, fuck, I had no idea that it was that bad. Like, I guess because he never really like talked.
She didn't read the book alive because like
maybe not. Maybe. I don't know.
Whatever. You do you.
But one of the things I read about the movie too is that they don't focus on the cannibalism so much, but the rest of it, like their relationships together, like I mean they do touch on it, but it's like often
I don't know.
It's not like, oh, we're just gonna focus on the fact that you ate your friends. Because it's not. But then it was like one of those things, the aftermath of it was when they kind of came out and was like, how did you all survive? And then they had to admit that, yeah, we had to eat the dead bodies. And it was some kind of like scandal a little bit. I mean, obviously, like I said, because these people were Roman Catholic. But it was like one of those things that somebody did bring up the whole like, well, Jesus said, this is my body broken for you kind of thing. And it was like, okay, well, we absolve you of your sin of eating your friends. And I'm like, is it really a sin though when they're dead and you're dying? Like,
especially like
that's an emergency.
I'm also like, let's say that it's, it's you and it's your friends and your family. Like, if I had died, like I'm dead and you're still alive, I would want you to eat my body to stay alive if you could. Like, I mean, I would want
and that's
that.
kind of what they talked about too, is like and they had talked about, I guess, with each other, is if something were to happen to me, go ahead and do it. Yeah. Because it's like you're not there anymore. It's not like they were killing people to do it.
If there's anything that I can do to help you survive after I've gone, then please, cut my hair, use it to stuff your whatever you need to do. Like, I get it.
Yes. Right. Use it for warmth. Do whatever. I don't care. Do what you gotta do.
This is my PSA for reminding everyone, no matter what time of year it is when you travel, make sure you pack at least one pair of jeans, one pair of fuzzy socks, and a sweatshirt, just in case. That's all I'm saying.
I think it said that Parado guy, when they took off on their little trek through the mountains, he was wearing like 4 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
Like three shirts, you know, because I think, like I said, they were not prepared. So it was
Yeah.
like four pairs of jeans, like three polos and a jacket. And it was just like you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to you know, like it was just kind of like I just find this story amazing that, like you said, 16 people survived and they all did not die.
Yeah, and it's just Lord, yeesh. But I will say, again, it's been too long since I read the book. I obviously they talk in some depth about the cannibalism, but in the way that you talked about, in that it was a struggle and like coming to grips with it
Right.
intellectually, and on can you do this and how do you do this, and I mean, and it wasn't like they were cooking it. There was no way to cook it. They were just
Right.
eating it.
Right. I mean, and
So,
they did say that they started with just, the skin, the fat, the muscle,
mm-hmm.
and then they eventually did have to move to like organs
Yeah.
and, on some of them brains. I mean, but it was just like they did what they had to do.
Yeah.
It's probably
There's
not,
there's no ill will. I mean,
no.
you,
I mean, and you want to
but,
talk about PTSD,
mm-hmm.
OMG, like good grief. I don't even want to think about it. Like that's just, you know, and it's like I
What?
said, like there's been books and there's been a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and now there's another movie made about it, and it's just all so incredible that they were
Mm-hmm.
able to survive. And MacGyver, like it's like it really was like
Yeah,
MacGyver their way out of it.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of these guys were like in their 20s, you know, and that's probably part of the reason why they were able to was because they were younger, they were fit, they were, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I felt bad for the Nando Prada guy because it said that his mom and his sister were on that flight, and his mom died like in the initial crash.
Right.
Like he got knocked out, and it said he was out for 3 days. And when he woke up, his mom was dead, but his sister was like severely injured,
Mm-hmm.
and she eventually succumbed to her injuries. And he said that he protected them from being eaten. Like that was one thing, I guess. It was, I don't know if it was just too much for him, but he kept them from being consumed. But I mean, I don't blame him for like
No.
being selfish in that way when that's your family.
Yeah, and it's just you have it's a lot of hard decisions that you gotta
Yeah.
make. So,
But yeah. So that's the story of the Andes plane crash in with the rugby team, not soccer.
right.
I think I had always just heard soccer. I'm like, that's
I
a
think me
lie.
too, honestly. I think, and like I've read it, so now I feel really dumb, but I swear.
Well, I mean, like you said, you were a junior.
Yeah, it has been many, many
It's
years
been
ago.
over 20 years.
Well, that was an excellent, horrific story, Claire.
It's terrible. It really is.
What made you decide that this would be the perfect time? The 100th episode is when we should go cannibalism. Like, I mean,
I don't know.
that
It was
feels like a
just
pretty strong leap there.
I don't know, wild card, and I didn't know if there was anything else on the wheel where you could stick that in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
you've got a whole bunch of random stuff on the wheel now that I've not really looked at lately. So I was like, I didn't
It's true.
know if
Yeah.
there was something that would it would fit in, and I was like, you know what? It's a wild
I
card.
don't have cannibalism on the Wheel of Fate. That's correct.
Go hard or go home. So
I love it. I mean, I hate it because I'm, having all of my junior year flashbacks right now of having to read Alive.
I'm really
Ugh.
glad I didn't have to read that in high school.
Well, and so, I mean, I may be wrong because at some point all of high school blends together in that weird way.
Right.
But I swear, if it wasn't the same year, then it was maybe like
Close.
the next year or whatever. But
Right.
within like a 2 year period, my high school English teachers had me read Alicia, which is the Holocaust survivor
Yes.
story of horror. I mean,
I
she
did.
survives, but like everybody else dies. So
Yeah. And it
it was
was
a
just
lot.
like, I mean, she goes into detail about how her, I mean, and it's
So
terrible, about how
much.
her family is slaughtered by the
It's,
Germans, and it's
I mean, like,
awful.
it's a powerful story, but it was a lot. It's a lot. to read
And
as a
also
teenager.
on top of that, did
Hmm.
you get to go watch her?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
April and I, not only did we have
She
to read it.
I assumed that's why everybody was reading it is
Yes,
because
yes, uh-huh.
she came and spoke and like from both because we went to different schools. So
Schools,
like
yeah.
they bussed us in from our schools to go watch it, which was
Yeah. To our church.
horrific.
They bust the high school kids in who were reading it
Hmm.
from the both schools to our church that we went to church to listen to her speak about her experiences and writing the book. And
Hmm.
it was just like, it was kind of surreal though, because you're sitting there and being like, this is the woman who
Yeah.
survived the Holocaust. I
Yeah.
mean, because you hear, and that was to me was, I felt like that was kind of cool though.
I did too, because I was like, here in London, little tiny
Yes.
London.
Yes. That to me was one of
Yeah.
those like surreal experiences that was like, this is the woman who wrote this book, and this book is
Hmm.
so terrible, and she lived through all these things, and oh my gosh, like that to me was one of those
Yeah.
that was like real kind of cool high school
But
moments,
so
but also
that
I felt really
book.
bad for her. It was like, this is terrible.
And then I think before I read hers was when we read Alive. I'm pretty sure I had to read Alive first, and then I
Okay.
read Alicia. And
Uh-huh.
I am 90% sure that was the same year.
Yeah.
But I also think that in that same year we read In Cold Blood, which
Oh my gosh.
I fucking love that book, by the
Right,
way.
right, right, right,
But like talk about roller coaster ride of like mind fucks of all of this
right,
true horror stories, and I was like, oh, turns out I like true crime and other horrible things.
right. Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that was excellent, Claire. Thank you. I loved
You're
it. I mean, I
welcome.
hated it, but I loved it.
You're welcome.
And I love so much that you picked a cold hellscape to discuss for our 100th anniversary,
100th
our,
episode.
our 100th episode celebration, because I too chose a really cold ass place.
Oh, did you?
I decided that, you know what? It's wild card. There's only, like you said, there are some stories that you just don't have a chance to tell based on the Wheel of Fate. And
Right.
this is what that category is really for. So I thought, you know what? I love to talk about what one of my Roman empires is
Yes.
Mount Everest and the sheer amount of dead people that are on it.
Uh, you know what? I know that you told me Mount Everest, but I don't think that like dawned on me when
I
I chose
didn't.
this.
I did not explain to you what I was doing with it. I just
No.
said I'm doing Everest, and you're like, okay, whatever. Hmm.
Yeah, when you told me that, you didn't I don't think that dawned on me that that's why you were picking a mountain. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell you what I had chosen, and I
No,
didn't. Damn it,
no,
we did it again.
we are twin flames, Claire.
How did we do that? Did not even like dawn on me that we both chose like mountain stories.
We chose horrific mountain stories
Oh
for
my God.
our 100th episode.
Because I didn't tell you. She told me she did Everest, but I didn't tell her I was doing the
Mm-hmm.
Andes thing.
So I got all of my information from All That's Interesting, Business Insider, the BBC, National Geographic, and of course, Wikipedia.
Yes.
So you may know Mount Everest. This is where I'm going to put up a beautiful picture of the beautiful, tallest mountain in the world at 29,032 feet. It is beautiful, covered in snow and ice, and sits on the border of China and Nepal. So like one half, the summit of it like is literally the line dividing the countries. So
Okay.
one side of the mountain is China, the other side is Nepal.
I guess you hear most people who ascend it
Mm-hmm.
go from like the Nepal side.
They do now. They do now, but not always.
Okay.
But so it is the tallest peak in the world, but is in the Himalayan mountain range. In Nepal, they refer to it as, I'm going to get this wrong, Sagarmatha,
Okay.
which means forehead in the sky, which I think is hilarious.
Forehead in the sky. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though it is the tallest peak in the world, it's actually not the hardest one to climb. That's actually K2, which is in, I think,
Yes.
the same region, but it is actually much, much harder to climb. So that's why everybody climbs Everest, because you can. So we're going to go back 100 years. What? That was my homage to our 100th episode.
Yes.
To 1924.
Hooray.
Hooray, 1924. So it's kind of the beginning of the 20th century. The Brits were very British in the early 1900s. You know how they love to do things, take things, colonize things, own things.
Oh, yeah.
You know how they are. Well, so they decided that they wanted to be the first to reach the North Pole and the South Pole. And so they sent out expeditions to do that.
Okay, yeah.
And they failed. They didn't make it.
And they failed.
And so they were like, oh, man, we got to restore our, like, national pride here. Like, we failed at both these endeavors, so we need to come up with something else. And they're like, what if? Instead of trying to go to a pole, what if we just climb the highest mountain on Earth? Oh, the Brits. So 1924 was the year that they got their expedition together. Now, in 1924, Nepal was forbidden to Westerners, so could not go via the Nepal side. So they went up through the China side.
Okay. Why was it forbidden? Do we know?
Just the times.
Okay.
It was just
wondering.
A closed community.
I was like, is there something?
They probably were terrified about being, colonized by the Brits, to be honest.
Fair. That's fair.
So,
I mean.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you can't come here. So that's fine.
No Brits
They're like, we
allowed.
can totally do it from the China side. It's fine. And so they had like a group of maybe 6 or 7 climbers that their goal was to try and get to the summit of Mount Everest. And the first 2 attempts that they tried were unsuccessful due to, weather or just like issues, not the right equipment,
Right.
It takes some practice.
Right. Trial and error. Absolutely.
So we get to their 3rd attempt, which included George Mallory and Andrew Irvine. And so, like, they were the 2, like, they had set up different camps. They had gone to go do the attempt or whatever. The others stayed behind doing other things, yada, yada. And they disappeared. They were never seen again.
Wow.
Now, one of the other members of the climbing team, his name was Noel Odell. Noel Odell. It's very hard to say. Claimed that he saw them during their attempt from a lower campsite. And he said that there had been like a sudden clearing of the atmosphere because there's lots of clouds up there, obviously.
Right.
It is a mountain. And for a few moments, the entire summit ridge and the final peak of Everest were visible. He could see it. And he was able to see a tiny black spot silhouetted on a small snow crest beneath a rock step in the ridge, and it moved. And then another black spot became apparent and moved up the snow to join the previous black spot. And he realized that that was the 2 members of his team, George and Andrew. And they were very close to the top. Like, they were super close. Like, he was like, oh my God, they're going to do it. But then, of course, the clouds came back in, and so he lost sight of them again. And then they were never seen again.
Ooh.
So,
suspicious. Nefarious.
It's like, very short distance. So they disappeared. No one ever saw them again, and no one knew. Did they make it to the summit before something happened? Like, did they make it to the top or not? So the Brits eventually give up, go home, and it's not until 1953 that Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay managed to summit Mount Everest for the very first time.
Uh-huh.
Now, since then, more than 4,000 people have summited Mount Everest.
Yeah.
So, whatever. And it is now the world's largest open air graveyard.
What?
So, like, here's the thing about Everest. It's not, I mean, it's dangerous. People die. And
Right.
you know, that's part of it. Like, you know that you're taking that risk if you go and attempt this. And
Right. Yeah,
especially
of
like
course.
as like we've gotten better at gear and whatever, but like it's cold up there.
Yes.
But so since it's so dangerous, when people die up there, often the bodies are just left where they died. They're not removed because it's so dangerous to try and remove them.
Yes.
So, ugh. Basically, the top portion of the mountain, which is everything above 26,000 feet, so the top like 3,000 feet, they refer to as the death zone. This is where you're probably gonna die. If you're gonna die, probably up here.
It's probably going to be there.
Because, and this is probably some of the stuff that they had to deal with in the Andes trying to survive, is that the oxygen levels up there are a third of the levels that you would find just like normal sea level.
Well, see, and where they were at 11,500 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, what, like half?
Yeah.
If even that? Half of what? So
like the oxygen levels are lower there. Also, the barometric pressure at Mount Everest causes things to feel like they weigh 10 times heavier than they actually do. So,
when you got
anything that would weigh 1 pound actually feels like 10 pounds.
So anything that's 10 pounds feels like
100 pounds.
Oh, God.
And I'm a pansy, guys.
April's like, I am not here for that.
No, I'm not carrying crap. Sorry. And so because of these two things, because of the barometric pressure making things feel heavier and the decrease in oxygen, it makes people get fatigued quicker. They feel sluggish. Yes. They're more likely to get disoriented. And when you're up on the peak of a mountain, that's not a great place to get disoriented.
Right.
It also causes some pretty extreme stress on organs. And so they really try and keep people, and this is, again, just like the top 3,000 feet, the death zone. Yeah. They really recommend that you stay no more than 48 hours in that zone. Because the longer you're there, the longer or the more lingering the effects can be, the harder it can be to,
right.
You know. So a lot of people tend to die. And they're just there. On top of that, because it is so very cold, as you start freezing, you become delirious and you think you're hot, so you start taking clothes off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, you know, there's probably some naked bodies hanging out up there too. Just so they've pulled things off.
Right.
Also fun. There are instances of people talking to like imaginary companions because they're slowly losing their mind.
I was going to say, you become like delirious and you're like hallucinating.
Yeah. So to date, over 300 people have died on Everest, and at least 200 of the bodies are still there.
Holy cow.
Now, these bodies serve as like warnings to hikers, you know, as they're going up. be careful. This is what can happen to you if you're
Oh
not
yeah.
whatever. But also they're kind of like gruesome mile markers, which is really disturbing. So there's a guy, and I have pictures, and I've tried not to pick pictures where you can like see faces because that's
Right.
disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
But Green Boots is one of the more famous bodies on Mount Everest.
Who is
That Green Boots.
Green Boots?
Green Boots. Because you pretty much have to pass by this particular body to get up to the summit.
Uh-huh.
And the identity is contested. They're not sure exactly who Green Boots is, but most people think that his name was, I'm going to get it wrong, Tswang Palyor, an Indian climber who died in 1996.
Okay.
And so he is located kind of near a cave that a lot of climbers, you have to pass in order to get to the summit, but also many will choose to rest there. Like, that's a good place to take a break because there's a little bit of protection, right next to
A dead body.
Green Boots. Which they call him that because his boots are green, as you can see in this picture. Look at those green boots.
Wow.
His body, thankfully, has recently been removed, or at least covered with rocks. So he's not been spotted recently. So they do believe that he has finally been removed, but that is horrifying. In 2006, David Sharp was attempting to summit Everest on his own, which don't do that.
I started to say, don't you need like
Don't
a
do
team
that.
of people? Like
everyone says, don't do that.
right. Like, no, you need people to help you. Yeah.
And so he chose to rest at the cave next to Green Boots. And he ended up freezing to death. Like, his body was frozen in like the huddled up position.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what is more disturbing is that at least 40 people passed him that day as he was obviously in distress and dying, and no one stopped to help him.
Wow.
They called it like summit fever. Like, once you get to a point, like, your focus is just to summit Everest and you just don't care about anybody else. I'm like,
Gotcha.
whoa. Like, this guy died because you just didn't care.
Didn't even care. Yeah.
Now, the oldest known body that they have been able to find on Everest, that Everest claimed, was George Mallory from 1924.
They did find him.
So no one for years, like, he disappeared in 1924.
Right.
For years, no one knew what happened, whether he achieved his goal or not, but they found his body in 1999.
Okay.
Disturbingly, his upper torso, half of his legs, and his left arm was almost perfectly preserved.
Ooh.
He was still in a tweed suit.
Who goes hiking in a tweed suit? I get that it was the 20s.
It's like,
but still.
The Brits, Claire. Only the Brits.
Oh, of course. Oh my God. Like, oh, I'm at the top of the mountain, but I'm going to be in my finest tweed. Like,
my finest tweed. This is the tweed jacket I wore to summit Everest. Like, I don't know.
I mean, what? You're like you fucking Sherlock Holmes or something, or Watson. I mean, come on. Jeez. Like, I'm going hiking in my tweed suit. Like, what? I don't care if it is 1923. That is not the attire that one uses to scale Mount Everest. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm with you. He did have, they called it primitive climbing equipment, but obviously of the day when people didn't do this.
Right.
And he had oxygen bottles, so, like, they were doing it right.
Gotcha.
For the 20s.
For the 20s, right.
They found that there was a rope injury on his waist. Oh. And they believe that he was roped to another climber when he fell, which would have been Andrew. But they have yet to find Andrew's body.
Interesting.
So they're uncertain what happened to Andrew. Like, we still don't know. One of the more sad stories is of Hannelore Schmatz, who in 1979 was the first woman and the first German to die on Everest.
Okay.
Now, she made it to the summit. She made it to Mount Everest.
Nice.
She got to claim her I did it, I did it,
Yeah.
but was so exhausted that she set up camp in the death zone, even though her Sherpa, because when you go to Everest, like if you're
Yeah.
climbing, you have a Sherpa who
Right. Who's helping?
knows more than you.
Right.
And her Sherpa was like, no, don't set up
Don't stay
camp
here.
here. And she did it anyway. And that night, a snowstorm hit, and she tried to push through and make it to base camp. But eventually, she died from lack of oxygen and frostbite. And what's so sad is that she was only 330 feet away from base camp.
Boo. Oh, that sucks.
I know.
That is terrible.
But so her body is still on the mountain and is extremely well preserved due to, the fact that it's always freezing. It's almost always below zero.
Wow.
And she remained in plain view of the mountain's southern route, which is the most popular route, leaning against a long deteriorated backpack with her eyes open.
Ooh.
And her hair blows in the wind until at some point the very high winds either covered her with snow or blew her off the mountain. So they're not sure if she's still there and buried, if she's been moved away, but no one knows where she is now. But she was there for a long time as a mile marker.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
So, as I said, there's like 300 people have died there. 200 bodies, estimate, are still there. But that's because trying to recover the bodies is so incredibly dangerous. Between the weather conditions, the terrain, the lack of oxygen, it's hard to even get to the bodies. And even if they can get to them, they're frozen and like you have to dig out underneath them because it's like ice at this point. So a lot of times it's so dangerous that they just don't. In fact, when Hannelore died, they had 2 rescuers who tried to come recover her body, and they died trying to recover her body.
Boo.
And so it's essentially if you decide that you're going to be an idiot and go climb Everest, that is one of the things you have to talk out with your family, like before you go, like sign paperwork that you want to leave your body there or that you'll pay the ridiculous amount to get it recovered.
Oh my gosh.
So on top of all of that, so there's all these dead people. In Nepal, for Sherpas, like for their, I guess, their culture, their religion, it's considered very disrespectful to the mountain gods to leave these dead bodies just chilling on this, holy mountain.
Right.
And so when they can, they do try and remove any dead bodies as that's possible because they don't want them there. And so in 2019, they were able to remove at least 4 bodies. The Nepalese trash collectors, because, hey, guess what else is all over the mountain? Dead bodies and trash. Right. So there is an alarming amount of trash on Everest. Because
that is also sad to me. Like, come on, guys, do better.
Nothing can decompose, really, because it's mostly frozen. So Everest is not only the world's largest open-air graveyard, but is also the world's highest garbage dump.
That's sad. That's so sad.
So slopes are littered with like the empty oxygen canisters. There's abandoned tents, food containers, and of course, human feces.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
So
I don't even think of that stuff. And I mean, that fair. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like at the base camps or whatever, they have tents, they have toilets, they have trash
Right.
areas or whatever that can be kind of dealt with and carried away. But once you're going up into like the death zone where they don't have like these base camps set up and you're camping on the side, working your way up, you're just leaving your shit literally wherever
Ugh,
you took the dump. So
that's terrible.
it is terrible because it ends up contaminating the water supply for the area. And so in 2019, they estimated that there was almost 18,000 pounds of poop left just that
Oh
year.
gosh, that's awful.
And
Oh,
so
that's so bad. We are horrible.
we are
Human
horrible.
beings are horrible. Can I?
And
Ugh, gosh, that's awful.
so one of the things I read said that they think that one of the main reasons that people who do climb Everest, because it takes several weeks, you have to spend a lot of time at
Right,
the base camps, slowly acclimating before you can get to the point where you can go
right.
into the death zone and
Yes,
climb. That a lot of people get sick in those camps and get like diarrhea and stuff because of the tainted water supply from all the people who've left their shit that gets, because it does melt some and water comes down. Like it's a watershed, guys. It does what snow does and
right.
it gets into things. So don't drink the water.
Bleh.
So it's really hard to get it cleaned up because there's, in the same way it's hard to remove a body because they're frozen. Like trash gets frozen, like encased in ice. You have to dig out and around it, and it feels like it weighs much more than it really does. So
Right.
it's a whole compounding issue, and
Mm.
it's gross. Like I can't.
Yeah, it
Like
sounds
again,
gross.
remember the beautiful, pristine beauty of Mount Everest. It's actually covered in dead bodies, garbage, and shit.
Terrible. It's so bad.
And because of the cool new climate change trend that we're experiencing, with all of the glaciers slowly melting and ice sheets changing, it is melting more than it had been. So it is impacting, again, their water supply more. But it's
Yeah.
also exposing the dead bodies as they
Ugh.
as it
Yeah.
melts, which, is helpful in that maybe we can now, recover some of them, but also is like, oh, hey, look, there's a new dead body over there. Ah.
Uh,
On average, 6 people die each year trying to climb Everest. But those numbers are rising because of, Claire, are you ready for this?
mm-hmm.
Overcrowding.
What?
So many people try to climb
Overcrowding.
this goddamn mountain that, like, I mean, I'll pop up some pictures so that you can see, but like there is like a small little path to get to the summit, and it's just like a
Yeah.
line of people, and they're having to like baby inch around because one wrong step and you fall off the freaking mountain. But so like there's like a line to get to the summit. It's insane. So more people are dying as a result. In 2023, so in last year, 12 people died and 5 more are missing and presumed dead. So that's 17. When the average is 6, that's 17.
Wow.
So the summit season is only 8 weeks long. You can only try and do this in April and May because otherwise
Yeah, it's too cold and
it's too dangerous. It's too much snow, too much whatever. This is the only time you can do it. And last year, 900 people, that includes the Sherpas who go with them, tried to summit Everest. 900 people in 8 weeks. Like,
That's a
what
lot.
the hell? And to do it, it costs between like $50,000 and $130,000, kind of depending on just to do the damn thing. And then on top of that, if you do die and they do try and bring your body back, that's another 80,000 plus to recover your body. And that's just to bring it down to like base camp. Like that's
not to get it back to the States if you're from here, like to get it out of the country or
because then it's like, do you have them buried somewhere there? Do you have them cremated and their remains sent to you? Do you pay for the entire flight? Although, like, I mean, it is stupid. And like, my favorite thing that I learned about this was that, okay, if, because Mount Everest is the tallest peak in the world, but if
Right.
like the bottom of Everest was at like sea level
Mm-hmm.
and you climbed it, like anybody could climb it. It's not hard. It's not like there are some areas that are more difficult, but like any decent average person could do it. The only reason that it is hard is because of the barometric pressure and the lack
Yeah.
of oxygen and, you know, the fact that it's below freezing all the time. But like
Yes.
the actual climbing of it wouldn't be that hard. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so wait. Someone is spending $100,000 to go do this stupid thing. They could die, have to spend another $100,000 to get their dead body out of there. On top of that, they're leaving their shit everywhere and their trash everywhere.
So, in all reality, you're saying that climbing K2 would be more impressive.
Yes. Yes, I am. Much more impressive.
See, because my favorite meme about Everest is the one that's like, what is it? Something about every dead body on Mount Everest was once a motivated person, so maybe you want to calm down. Like that's like my, and
Yes.
it's like that's my favorite meme. I feel like all these people who are like, huh, like especially like the beginning of the year, all these people who are like going to go work out, and you can never
Yeah.
get into the gym
Yeah.
because, especially like if you're one of those people who go to the gym all the time,
Yeah.
and then it's like. All
We
these people are
decided
like,
to avoid the gym until we went back on the 10th, which is National Quitters Day. That's when most people have quit whatever their resolution was. So
right, yeah.
that's when we went
And it's
back.
like every dead body on Mount Everest was once
Yes.
a motivated person, so maybe you want to
And,
calm
like,
down.
I guess to me, you know, since it's no longer you have to be this super experienced hiker to do it. Like, I mean, you have to really know
Right.
your shit. Like, you can't be pathetic and do it, but like,
Right.
an awful lot of people can kind of just do it, and that
Like you
makes
said,
it
if 900 people are like lining up to like
yes.
walk up this trail.
Uh, and then let's see. Recently, in order to try and combat all the trash and garbage and bullshit that they leave behind, they started requiring a $4,000 deposit if you're gonna do it, and you can get that money back if you bring back. I forget what the amount was. But it was like the average amount of trash that people leave. Like it was like 80 liters or 8 pounds or what you had. If you brought back that same amount of trash with you, then you got your $4,000 back. But
Wow.
in order to try and convince people to you pack it in, pack it out kind of a thing. But I'm
Yeah.
like, good Lord.
I mean, that's fair though. It's like,
Yes.
gosh, come on, be better.
So that is my story of Mount Everest and the fact that it's covered in dead bodies, trash, and feces. You're welcome.
Well, hooray.
Hooray! Yay, people.
I loved it. Thanks.
But
It's one of those things that I don't think you think about. Like you're just like, okay.
Well, and like the number of people who die waiting in line to summit is
Right.
it rises every year, and like they die from the wrong step or
Right.
because they fell, or they died because they ran out of oxygen, or they got delirious, and because they had to wait in line to get to the goddamn summit, and that just makes my mind explode. I'm like,
Right.
it's literally just this line of people. It's insane.
You're just like, what?
It's insane. I'm like, why are you doing this?
Right. You're
What
just
are
like,
you
what is
thinking?
happening?
Way. But there it is. That is my Mount Everest story. Happy 100th episode, Claire.
Yes. That was excellent. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you. Nothing says happy 100 like dead bodies in the snow,
Right.
apparently. We
Apparently.
both had that going on in our
We
stories.
did. I did not even like when you told me Everest because I had already chosen this one and I didn't say anything. Like I didn't even like you're like, yeah, I think I'm gonna do something on Mount Everest. Like I didn't even like register when you said that, like what you were gonna be doing.
Yeah. It's It's one of those things. In fact, my sister,
Because I think you just said Mount Everest. I
I
don't think
did. I
you
did not specify.
clarified. Yeah, you didn't clarify what you were doing.
But when my sister was in Boston a few weeks ago for what I call her culty thing, but
Her culty work thing. Yeah.
her culty work thing,
Yeah.
um, that was at Harvard.
Yes.
One of the sessions, they had to read an article about Everest. And I said, make sure you bring up how many dead bodies are there because it's a terrible. Like, I'm
Right.
tired of people acting like climbing Mount Everest is something. I'm like, no, no, no. All these people die and then they just leave you there and you're a mile marker. And she was
Right.
like, what? And I was like, yeah.
Yes.
And then she had that look of, why does my little sister know this shit? But,
Right. Right.
it's fascinating. But, all right.
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
what are you judging this week for our 100th episode?
I think I'm gonna judge. Ugh. I've been reading. Okay. So last year,
Reading.
yes, I'm reading. So last year, I got back into reading and I hit my little goal of 52 books. I'm gonna do it again. Do my 52 books this
Mm-hmm.
year. And so starting out strong. Yeehaw. Anyway, so I'm still doing the Zodiac Academy books.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've not finished that whole thing, which it's not done. I think they've still got like another book to release. Anyway, so I'm like on book eight. Eight, I think. And there's so many.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I started it and like the last book was like so gut wrenching and I was like, oh God, this was terrible. And then this one starts and it's still gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even gonna lie. Like I shed like a couple of tears at the beginning of this book. There was a moment where I would like literally like had tears like this
Aw.
sucks. Anyway, but I'm reading and I'm just like, who are these fucking people? These point of views. Because when it first started, it was just two points of views. And as it's gone
Right.
on, it's been like, oh, we're gonna add some more people. I don't even know. And so I'm like looking up people on Goodreads, like oh my God, apparently there are like 9,000 points of views. Like I think one chick literally said there's 19 in
Ew.
this book.
That is too many.
19 points of
That,
views in this book. And I'm like, do I even want to read this now? And I mean, it's just like, but why?
yeah.
Do I want 19 points of view in one book? I don't. And that's the biggest complaint I'm saying about this book. They're like, you could have cut out probably A, too many points of view. B, this book is 1,200, almost 1,300 pages long.
Okay, so that means it should have been at least two, if not three books. That's insane.
Right. And so that was the biggest complaint, as I was saying on Goodreads, was people complaining about too many points of views. And a lot of those points of views were irrelevant because they're
Mm-hmm.
side characters. Like one of them they mentioned was a guy that hasn't even been mentioned in the book since like book 3 or 4.
Hmm.
Maybe, yeah. Like what the hell? I'm like, why are we doing
Mm-hmm.
this? Like I don't. I'm just like I'm thinking about like at this chapters. I'm like, skip this chapter. Why do I want this? I don't need this in my life. Like I'm usually not that person, but still, it's just
That
like usually.
is that is insane. It's been a long time, but when I worked at the library in Lexington, we did like one book, one community, and it
Yeah,
was cannot for the life of me remember the name. Uh, but it was a YA book, but it had so many perspectives that like I couldn't even remember who everyone was. I couldn't keep them all
yeah,
straight, and I was like, I don't like this anymore. It's too
right. And I think that's what this book is going to be. It's going to be, like who am I even reading? Who
mm-hmm.
what
Whose
first
head am
point?
I in right now? Because I don't really
Right,
know anymore. Because I
right,
hate when I have to like go back and look to remind myself, like, who is this again?
right. And there, I
Whose
mean,
book chapter
I
am I
think by this point you should have like your few that it's like it should just
reading?
be these people. Like, don't keep adding because like apparently this book there are like 3 or 4 people that you've never even heard from before, and it's
Oh,
like, yeah, and it's like, but why?
hmm.
Why are we doing that now? I don't understand. I don't get it. And I'm just like, I'm just kind of like, do I even want to like finish this book now? Do I even
No.
want to? I'm just like, But I had a Libby
Mm-hmm.
book pop up, so I've stopped because Libby books are only like 2 weeks So
Mm-hmm.
I have to, this book is more important.
I understand.
So
I
it's
understand.
like, it's one of the things like, I got to do this. But I'm just like,
Yeah.
I think it just makes
I
it more
hate
confusing.
that.
And it just seems like each book in this series just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And I'm not usually one of those people that's like, oh, this book is so long if it's a
Mm-hmm.
good book. But this seems to be one of those books that's like quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, and I feel like when a writer has been like in a series that is successful, they're
Yeah.
given maybe too much
Yeah.
leeway, and
Yeah.
I'm
Uh-huh.
like, somebody needed an editor to step in and say, "Hey, too
You
long, too many viewpoints. You
yeah.
need to edit this." But
Like
whatever.
what are we doing here? Yeah. And I'm just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
like, do I even want to read this anymore?
No, I mean, I'm sure you will because
I ain't no quitter.
you keep saying that, but like, life is too short, man. I don't want to be that stupid body on Everest in order to be like, I'm not a quitter. Like, I'm quitting this book. This book's garbage and I don't like it. And it makes it hard for you to pick it up and want to read it. So I'm not going to finish it. Ha
Yeah.
ha.
I think it's just because it's in a series. Like if it wasn't a
Yeah.
series, I probably might DNF it, but it's like supposedly the next to last book in this series. So it's like,
Mm-hmm. No, I know. You're at this point, you're so far in, you kind of have to. I get
I
it.
know.
Well, that's excellent. I understand. And I hate too many viewpoints too. It's very
Yeah,
irritating.
it is because it really is. You
I
get
feel like
confused. You're
3
like,
is kind of the maximum. Like you can have maybe 3 main. You can have a couple maybe of one-offs here or there, but like
yeah,
no, I find it exhausting. At that point, it's like just write an omnipresent narrator, third person.
right, right.
Why are
Like,
we doing
why
this?
are we
It doesn't
doing?
have to be first person all the
Why
time.
are
It's
we doing
fine.
first person? Yeah, why? I don't
Ugh.
understand that. I mean, because at least like when we were reading like what is it, Lucy Foley,
Mm-hmm.
like she had like a finite group of people, but even then, not every single one of them
Yes.
had. She had like maybe like what 4 or 5
Mm-hmm. She's one that does like 3 kind of
that
main
it was
people.
from their perspective or their thing,
Yeah. She
Yeah.
usually has like 3-ish
But
main
then
perspectives and then like a couple of others that pop in to fill in the blanks. But
yeah, but but when I've read one of the reviews on this book and somebody was like 19 different POVs and I
ugh,
was like, "Oh
no,
my
no,
God." And
no.
then they're naming off some of the people who we get POVs from and I'm like, "Why? Why?" That person had this one guy, I've not heard from him since like book 3. This person is like such a little side character. Why does he get chapters? Like this character, it's like there's just like I don't understand. They start naming these people who are getting their own chapters, and I'm like, you probably could have cut out, half this book and made it 600 pages, and it would have been
Mm-hmm.
fine. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand. I mean, like I said, I've not read it. I'm judging based on just the amount of pages and the amount of POVs alone. But I'm just like, was it necessary? Was it? Because mm, I just don't think. I have a feeling I'm going to be like, probably
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessary. You probably could have made this book 600 pages and it still would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think it needed to be almost 1,300 pages.
Well,
Anyway,
that is excellent.
I have a feeling
Thank
I'll
you.
probably reading like it'll be one of those books that I'll read and then I'll get tired of it and I'll go to something else
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll read something because these books are like these authors are terrible. They treat their readers so dirty. It's just like I mean, it's worse than Harry Potter where you end and it's just like bad things, bad things, bad
Mm-hmm.
things. They end badly all the time. Like the last book just fucking sucked. People dying and you're just like ends with people death and destruction. Everybody's like split up all over the fucking place and you're just like, I feel so dejected, you know. And it's like, so I'm really kind of glad this other Libby book popped up because I'm like, oh, this is kind of like another little cozy book. I think I'm gonna
Uh,
like, and it's only 295 pages. I think I'm gonna read this give myself a reprieve from
Mm-hmm.
that for a minute, because it's probably just going to be more death and destruction and people having their hearts ripped out, all of the above. So yeah, that's my judge. Keep it simple, guys. If you're writing, don't keep it simple. Don't
Mm-hmm.
have 19 points of views. If you're an author and you're listening to this, nobody wants 19
Mm-mm.
POVs. No,
Mm-mm.
nobody needs that. Nobody wants 1,300 pages.
Mm-mm.
Split that shit into 2 books.
Yep.
Because honestly, I feel like when you get to like 800, that's even like pushing it.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling had. There were times where like this could have been
Right.
less.
Same.
Mm.
Less is more. As what was that? Oh God. On. Did you ever watch Angels in the Outfield?
Yes.
That stupid, the really dickish uh announcer, Ranch Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy would be in his booth and he'd want to say something. And he'd always turn his like mic off and he'd be like, "Less is more. Less is
Mm-hmm.
more." That's how I'm like, "Less is more, guys. Come on." So yeah, that's my judge.
Excellent.
So what are you judging?
So this week, I am judging. I'm bringing back a judge, guys. You
Mm.
may remember that I got really obsessed with a TV show not terribly long ago. There's now, everyone, I know you're ready. There's now a season 2 of The Traitors.
Oh yeah.
And like, it's all stupid reality TV stars, and I don't give a shit about any of them. But I think Alan Cummings is the most amazing human being. His outfits are amazing, and he just is
He's so
hysterical.
extra.
Well, every line
He's
is
so
over
extra.
dramatic,
Oh,
and
he's so
it's
over dramatic.
hilarious.
Yes.
He is. I I've decided that I need to meet him in real life. I need to be best friends with Alan Cummings. Like, I think we would be so just like BFFs. Like, true. I mean, we're not twin flame, but like
No.
close. Oh God, it's so funny. But so I've only watched like the first 2.5 episodes, and it's overly dramatic. And there's a poison chalice, and everything is cracking me up.
Ooh.
I was watching it before we started recording. While I was eating lunch, and Spencer was like, "Well, that's very dramatic music," and I'm like, "It's a very dramatic show."
It's
It's
true. I mean,
amazing. It is amazing. It's oh God. And again, I hate all the people. I'm always cheering for the traitors because I don't like anybody. But
right.
like, let's be conniving and sneaky.
Yes.
So good. So good. Guys, you gotta watch it. It for no other reason than to see all of his amazing outfits. Cause like,
And how
nice.
dramatic he is. He's so dramatic.
Yes. Well, and
He's so over the top and I love it. It's just
he
yeah.
is. I feel like I need more Alan Cummings in my life. I need to go find more things he's done just to watch
Yes.
and be like, please show me the drama.
Yes. I saw what was it? A bootleg version of him with Emma Stone
Mm-hmm.
on Broadway in Cabaret.
Oh,
And it was
nice.
like, mwah, chef's kiss.
I am certain it was.
He was the MC and she was Sally Bowles, and it was amazing.
But yes, so that's my judge. Everybody go watch it. It's on Peacock.
Yes.
Which, if I were going to pick a human that exemplified a peacock, it would be Alan Cummings.
Yes.
Because you'll see him and then all of a sudden there'll be like the big tail floop. Like, look at me. And you're like, yeah. But it makes me laugh because like all of the people who are on this show, like all these reality TV stars, I've never seen them. I've never watched any of those shows because, in fact, some of them I've never even heard of. And I'm like, cool, you do you.
I think the
I don't
only
really care.
when
But
you sent me the trailer, the only
mm-hmm.
one that I've recognized off the bat, like in that, was that Johnny Bananas one. And I was telling you he
Right.
was on the challenge, which I don't watch
Mm-hmm.
reality TV show that much. But I was telling you that it was like he was such a dick on that show that I was like, ugh, I hate that guy. Because the
Well,
guy who actually won the challenge, they shat on him like the whole time. And it was like, I'm glad he beat your asses. You all deserve to
mm-hmm.
get your ass kicked by this guy because you all picked on him the whole. It was like it really was. They were just being a bunch of damn bullies. That's really what it seemed like to me. It was like, we're pretty much assholes. Leave this guy alone. Yeah, and they were threatened by him, and they should have been because he kicked their ass.
But that's all. Like it's all these people that like I don't care. I don't like them. Like you can just tell that you don't like them from the beginning. So like they don't need any of this money. I enjoy watching all the things happening to them and them getting all like, overly dramatic and
it's like who's gonna win the $250,000? I'm like, none of these assholes need $250,000.
But it's so beautiful. I can't even. You got to watch it for so many reasons. So many reasons. Okay.
I'm like you. It's like I always want the traitors because I feel like it's just because they're being sneaky, and it's like I want the sneaky people to win.
Yeah, I mean, for a show that's all backstabbing, it's like let's go. I want the king of the backstabbers, you know.
Right, and it just reminds me of that stupid like soundbite where it's like, "Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious."
Well, I mean, it's always so absurd. They're like. In this one, it's like, I heard your breathing change after, because he walks around and taps whoever the
Shut up. I heard your breathing change. Oh, bullshit.
I swear to God. Or, someone gets tongue-tied and says the word traitors that are faithful. And they're like, oh, well, you must be a traitor. And I'm like, you're all fucking idiots. You could draw a name out of a hat to vote people out and have better luck at voting out a traitor than the shit that you do on this show. So, hilarious. But... That's it. Which means that it must be time for...
Indeed.
Tarot time with April. A spooky.
Indeed.
All right. Well, I feel like this is a good time to ask the tarot cards. Will Claire and I ever be stuck on a snowy mountain surrounded by frozen dead bodies, right?
Oh my God.
No, that's a little insane. That's not really my tarot.
That's what I say. That's a little too like specific.
That's very specific tarot. How about this? Tarot, it is winter time. Will we see big snow this year? How about that?
Yes.
Big snow, no whammies.
Big snow, no whammies.
All right, let's see. We have the Two of Cups. We have the Ten of Swords. And the Wheel of Fortune.
Uh-oh.
This is probably bad. I mean, it's just a guess. But, like, it just feels like it's probably bad. Okay. I think the Two of Cups, though, is pretty great. I think it's a good card.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that was bad.
Yeah, this is the partnership card. So this is the bestie card.
Yes.
So we have each other's backs. It's cool.
Yeah.
But then the Ten of Swords looks bad because he's been stabbed by all 10 of the swords in his back. So let's see.
You're going to be betrayed.
It's the worst damn card ever. Rock bottom.
Oh, we're going to be betrayed by winter.
We probably are going to be betrayed by winter.
Besties betrayed by winter.
So that's fun. All about the depression. Cool.
I mean, it is winter. That's what winter is. Seasonal depression.
It is. That sounds right. That sounds right for winter. So we're partners in our depression.
In our seasonal depression.
Seasonal depression.
Yep. It sounds about fair.
The Wheel of Fortune, though, is gonna tell us something as soon as I can find it again. I can't find it. I can find everything else. Because that's how it works. Keep slimming, right? Slimming? Why are words not working for me anymore?
Words are hard.
They are. Here it is. Okay. This card is about the law of returns. It's about good things happening and luck turning around, or a warning to batten down the hatches and get ready to rumble. Okay, so partnership, everything gets shitty bad because seasonal winter depression, but then it all gets better. So basically, it's winter. We both will have maybe, but maybe it's like you'll have snow and I won't because you don't want it
Uh,
and I do.
maybe.
But
Or maybe
then,
the other way around.
but then it turns out okay because it changes and then I get to have my big snow and then you get to have warmth. How about that?
There you go.
Seems reasonable. So basically, guys, winter is winter and it'll be shitty and then it'll get better just like every winter before. Yay!
Hooray.
I mean, I say more reliable than the groundhog, like Groundhog Day
Right. Oh,
for
groundhog.
the tarot card reading. It's like, it's okay, cool. All right. What is going to be the topic of our 101 episode? It won't be Dalmatians because it's not on the spinner.
No, it won't.
All right. What's it going to be?
Oh.
Ooh. Unsolved mysteries. That's exciting. I'm here for that. That'll be fun.
I'm here for that.
So be sure to join us next week for Unsolved Mysteries. I don't know what I'll do.
I know.
Think about
right?
it.
Yeah, same. Like, I don't know.
But I hope you enjoyed our very frigid, death-filled 100th episode.
Since it is 14 degrees here.
It was snowing when we started, so it feels very on topic.
Right.
But until next time, when we bring you some unsolved mysteries, you can find us in all the things and at all the places at.
Brunch and Judge.
Please follow, like, comment, subscribe. And if you'd like to send us any topics for our wheel or any stories you'd like for us to cover, you can send them to us at.
brunchandjudge@gmail.com.
So until next time, keep on brunching.
And keep on judging.
Bye.
Bye.